Well, good morning, everybody. This is Michael Clement from Architectural Resource, and I am so excited to share with you Burh at Beacon Springs here on Earth Day celebration 2021. And Tom and Marty Burh, who are going to be part of our tour, I'm so excited to have you with us. So first of all, I want to say thank you to everyone who's made it possible to join us this morning for the Burh at Beacon Springs tour. We are so excited. You have myself as the principal of Architectural Resource, Tom and Marty Burh, the actual homeowners. We have Gary Cade, Kimberly Hayner, Delaney Davis, Austin Harrell, Chloe Ferrari, and Amy Wong, all from the Architectural Resource team here to support you in this event this morning. So thank you so much for making it, and thank you to our team, and particularly thank you to Tom and Marty. So before we get started, we're just going to roll through a little bit of housekeeping here so you know what we're looking at. The key thing is that we are unable to provide technical support during this event. I think if it's a Zoom meeting, there's got to be something that goes wrong. So when it goes wrong, you're on your own. If you get dropped from the event, please rejoin with that meeting ID that you have and have it handy just in case. During the event, all of you are going to be muted so that we can get through. We've got about 2 hours worth of material to present to you in an hour and a half. No chat feature will be available in this event. And if it's possible, which might be a little possible, may not be, if you can attend using a computer, we find that in the Zoom meeting that works out a little bit better. And I want to point out that there's an entire team behind this. I am speaking to this project with Tom and Marty, but there's a whole team behind us. And you can learn more about that at the visiblegreenhome.com website, and you can see more data about the project. All right, so we're going to start off with a little poll question. We want to know what brought you to this Visible Green Home Tour event. And there's several options. You're interested in a sustainable new home. You're interested in a sustainable remodeling, you're interested in sustainability generally, or you just happen to have some time on your hands. So take a look at those questions and give us your responses. We're going to give you 30 seconds to answer. And I think at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning coming into a Zoom meeting, it's probably you've got a little bit more motivation than just have some time on your hands. How are we looking, Delaney?
All right, everyone should be able to see that, but it looks like a majority of the people here are just generally interested in sustainability.
Excellent. Well, you're in the right place because you're going to learn about an incredible project. This is Burh at Beacon Springs, and part of what we're going to be doing this morning is I'm going to be giving you a literally a virtual experience. So let's see if you guys can see this. And then let's have a tour, aerial, of Burh at Beacon Springs Farm. This is a project that was certified Fully Living Building Challenge on December 14th, 2017. It's a 15-acre parcel that consists of 2 buildings, a primary residence and then an attached by a colonnade farm operations building. The house has roughly 3,500 square feet of finished space. The garage is roughly 2,400 square feet. And collectively, they make this project called Burh at Beacon Springs, which you're going to be learning about. What does it mean to be a Fully Living Building Challenge certified project? And I want to point out that at the time of certification, this was only one of 2 projects in the world to be able to make that claim. And we are so excited for you to be able to see this project today. All right, now I'm going to jump over to another screen. So I'm going to be bouncing back and forth. You'll see me looking all over the place this morning. All right, Living Building Challenge. What exactly is that? The Living Building Challenge is a philosophy first, and a advocacy second, and a certification program third. The whole idea is, what if nature was to build a building? And what if it functioned as elegantly and as efficiently as a flower? Many times we talk about in these programs a better world. Well, we're after a whole new world. With Living Building Challenge, the certification program talks about moving beyond merely sustainable. And I'm having a little delay here. Here we go. So on this chart, you can see at the left where existing code-built buildings are. And then we progress to green, and then we progress to high performance, and then we get to sustainable. Sustainable. What does sustainable mean? Sustainable, it's like, that's like we're just treading water. I use the analogy of, if I had a sustainable marriage, would I be bragging about? Probably not. What we're after is regenerative, really moving into that next stage. And for a Living Building Challenge project, that's exactly what we're looking at. This is the idea of what a new evolution, if not frankly revolution, might look like in terms of building. There are 6 different petals that are place, water, energy, health and happiness, pardon me, 7 petals: materials, equity, and beauty. These petals are then broken up into 20 imperatives. The Living Building Challenge is unique amongst all certification programs in that it's not merely based on what is modeled, it's based on what is actual. Tom and Marty, after they completed the project, had to live in the house for 1 complete year and prove that we were actually meeting the certification levels. And as of December 14, 2017, this home was fully certified living building. As I mentioned at the time, there were only 2 projects on the entire planet, 2 residences that met this criteria. All right, so that's awesome. That's awesome. But what are the particulars? Well, we're going to get into all the aspects of this project and what we did and how it performed and the reasons we did that. This is the site plan showing the house above and showing the sun's path. The house was carefully designed and positioned to take advantage of that solar energy. But what I'm wondering is, you might be thinking, certainly many people do, why in the world would Tom and Marty want to build a Living Building Challenge project? Well, let's hear from them directly.
It isn't as if we woke up one day and said, let's build a Living Building Challenge house. As we look back, it's a long series of small steps. And each step was simply the next logical thing to do. So we started with, let's build a house, let's build it out in nature somewhere. We found our 15 acres just outside of Ann Arbor.
Well, wait a minute. Let's rewind. Because what you actually started out to do was to do a remodel of your existing house.
Yes, it's true. Yes, and Michael
That'll
said,
teach you to get an architect involved.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. So we found this land, and as we learned about the land, we realized that it had been farmed, industrial farm style farming for many decades. And the land itself, the soil was used up, worn out. It just happened at the same time we were learning about permaculture at the time. Bigger title now is regenerative agriculture, and ways of growing food that produce food for people to eat, but also regenerate the land. We also were learning at that point about problems in food production and distribution in the United States. Factory farming, food deserts where it's really hard for people to find fresh produce to buy. Those three things together said, well, let's approach this land as what can we do to heal the land and to grow some food, and maybe we can give it away to people who have less access to fresh produce. Well, then we started talking with Michael about building a house, and Michael said, do you want to build green? And of course, the answer is
This
yes.
is the loaded question.
Well, but of course, Tom and I grew up in pretty nature-centered environments, both of us. It's always been important to us to be close to nature, to do what we can to, build natural systems. And so the answer, do you want to build green? Of course. And then Michael said, well, there's this new certification called Living Building Challenge. And to be honest, not a single one of us who got involved in the project really knew what we were getting ourselves into. But Tom and I said, yes, let's go for this. And then again, a series of steps of learning about what's required in this Living Building Challenge. And challenge is the key word, because there was so much to learn and so much to figure out. But it all comes back to small steps along the way. This next step, this is the logical thing to do. Oh, and now here we are. We decided to build a house that really works in concert with nature. How do we get there? Well, it took us 5 years to get there. A lot of planning, whole lot of planning, and that's why we're here.
And it's been almost 5 years that we've been here. So we're talking about developments over a 10-year period to do this. And the point is that it's little steps.
Right.
It's doesn't have to be a big decision, but so often it's pretty easy to make the small decisions that take us to the next step. Had we known the project that was ahead of us, or what the future would really hold, who knows what we would have decided and so on. We have like zero regrets that we made any bad decisions along the way.
No, it was all good.
It's,
And Tom and Marty, you guys were really pioneers. I mean, this was a relatively new program. There had only been one other project in the world, on the entire planet, that had taken this on in terms of residential scale. So you guys really stepped into a possibility that was like completely at the outer edges of the known green universe. It's amazing.
Yeah. And piece by piece, it really wasn't very hard. I mean, people look at what we have, or we talk about what we have, and it looks monumental. But in fact, it's just
a piece
a step at a time with strategic planning. Yeah, good for you guys. All right, well, we're gonna have three basic components to this presentation: energy, water, and IAQ. And we start with energy because I always call that as the entry drug to sustainability. And then we're going to talk about water because that's the other thing we've been overlooking. And then we're going to talk about IAQ. There is something called COVID out there I've heard about. So indoor air quality is a huge piece of this. All right, now this is where we're going to have some fun. This is the basic layout for the first floor of Becc at Beacon Springs. Let me go ahead and annotate on this. So Tom and Marty are currently sitting right here at their dining room table, and we're looking at them in this fashion. You can see the window in the kitchen beyond them there. Whoop, cancel. This is the primary living area, consisting of a living and a dining space. We have a kitchen over here, the farm operations office, the home office, the master, or we should call it now primary suite. This is the stairway that goes to the lower level. This is organized as a single-story ranch with a walkout lower level. And then we have a connecting hallway here to the north. And then this is the entry area to the space. Now, what we're going to be able to do today, through the magic of technology that would have never have been possible in pre-coronavirus, is take you guys on basically on a virtual tour. Now, I'm going to be jumping back and forth between different screens here. So we have had Tom and Marty's home digitally scanned, every inch digitally scanned. This now exists as a three-dimensional virtual experience model. And you can go and visit this yourself if you go to the Visible Green Home website, which looks like this. And at the top, there's the virtual Burbeck Earth Day celebration. If you click on that, you'll get a drop-down menu. If you click on Tour Virtually, you will be able to access this exact virtual model that we're sharing with you today. So you can, from the comfort of your own living room, go and visit their home anytime you'd like to. And here again is that website, visiblegreenhome.com. All right, so we're going to start the virtual tour by coming in from the outside and just bringing you into the home. So I'm going to change screen here. Apparently I think I'm polling. All right, new share. Desktop 3, share. All right. Can everyone see the entry area? All right, so this is the entry area to Tom and Marty's home. And we're now walking through the small transition space, and we're coming into the large open living area. Again, I'm showing you this now, but you at your own convenience can go through and visit this house in the same exact fashion. And as we head towards the back of the house, we're looking out at the patio. And if we come here to the dining room and spin the camera around, that looks an awful lot like Tom and Marty. Without Tom and Marty, when we were doing our rehearsal, said we should have had cardboard cutouts, like they do in the stadiums. They could be promoting their favorite team. So we're going to be jumping back and forth, but again, know that you can come and visit this anytime you want to, in any fashion you want to. All right, let's go back to the PowerPoint. That is desktop 2. Share. Okay. So, poll question. What is the first step to taking control of your energy future? Here are your options. Add a geothermal system, add solar panels, add a Tesla Powerwall battery, or 4, turn off the lights. And we're going to let Delaney allow these to accumulate, and we'll see where we are. All right, how are we doing, Delaney?
It looks like an overwhelming majority said turn off the lights.
Turn off the lights, add a geothermal system, and add solar panels. And Tesla, poor Tesla. What's up with Tesla? They're losing market share here big time on this poll. All right, well, let's go and have a look, and we'll make a decision at the end of what we're going to present as to whether or not your answers were correct. All right. There is the rule of 3 of energy management, and what it suggests is there are 3 pillars, 3 legs to the stool: conservation, utilization, and generation. Conservation means losing as little as you can, utilization, using as little as you can, and then generation, making as much as you can. This, boys and girls, is the process that we take everyone through in terms of their energy. And the very first thing we look at is conservation. Conservation is so important that we have to look at it through the layers of a building assembly, because conservation focuses on the building envelope. That's what separates you from the outdoor. That's the sweater that you put on yourself that protects you against the outside world. But when we put a very robust sweater, like we did around Tom and Marty, so as they're sitting there, even though they look like they're comfortable, they're actually wearing a sweater you can't see, and it's the building envelope. And there are 4 components to that envelope that we have to be super diligent about: the water layer, the air layer, the vapor layer, and the thermal layer. And you'll notice that the thermal layer is the last piece. For Tom and Marty's home, we used a variation on something called the perfect wall. And this was developed by Building Science Corporation that allows building walls to dry to the inside and the outside. Very important. In Tom and Marty's case, we have a R30 slab. Now, for those of you who don't know, R is resistance to energy flow. It's the inverse of U, which is thermal conductivity. R30 is the slab. Building code asks for R10. The basement walls are R30. Building code asks for R5. The above grade walls in Tom and Marty's house are R48. Building code asks for R20. And their roof is R68. Building code asks for R38. So we are significantly improving this thing called the building envelope in terms of Tom and Marty's house. And this is a view cut through the exterior wall of the house, showing you the roof, the exterior wall, the foundation. And if you notice, this insulation plane, which is up here, continues here, all the way down here, here, and then under the floor and up the wall. This is one of the most robust and progressive building assemblies that we have ever designed. Now, when you do this type of building assembly, you want to be mindful of, whoop, how come it's not clear? Delaney, can you clear my marks on the screen? For some reason, I don't seem to be able to clear that. See, if it's not a Zoom meeting, if something doesn't go wrong, it's not a Zoom meeting. Let me try going back.
I don't see
There
it
we go.
anymore. I think that
All right. So one of the things that we want to be mindful of when we design these high performance walls is the moisture content in that wall, because we've now reduced the drying potential. And so what we looked at is something called a hydrothermal analysis. In using that, we could see that the building wall was drying as time went on. After we're done with conservation, we then look at utilization. These are the pieces of equipment that we use to heat, to cook, to cool our food. One of the things that we always invite people to think about when they're designing a high performance house is to cut the cord on natural gas. I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's this little issue with carbon, which we're going to talk about a little bit more. But natural gas is being eliminated in many cities. I think, in fact, San Francisco just put a moratorium, or some city in the West Coast put a moratorium on new gas hookups. And the idea is we really want to shift over to an all-electric home. One of the big pushbacks we usually get from our clients when we're talking about an all-electric home is cooking, because, you know, cooking with gas and the control you get with gas. In Tom and Marty's house and in other homes that we've done where we've moved to all electric, we have also had an opportunity to introduce to them the idea of using an induction type cooktop. An induction cooktop heats the pan, not the surface. A gas range is roughly 40% efficient in converting BTU energy source into BTU in the food. With a induction range, we're 80% efficient. So it's a huge difference. And the other big thing that you'll learn about in a little bit is it helps to greatly reduce indoor air contaminants. We're discovering all kinds of interesting things with homes that have gas ranges. All right, now we are sitting up here with Tom and Marty, and we're going to go down the hallway and then down the stairs to the lower level. Let's go back to this. Going down the stairs, we're going to come down the stairs here. We're now in the lower level of Tom and Marty's home. This is a laundry mudroom, a bathroom. There are 2 bedrooms, and there's a utility space, which is where we're going to go next. Adjacent to that is a plumbing pit, and then we have a portion of unfinished basement over here. And then this area, which is underneath that entry space, is a root cellar. So that's the layout of this lower level, and we're going to go down and walk around through using the Matterport tour. Hang on a second. New share. It's kind of like driving a car with 3 steering wheels. All right. Are you guys seeing that yet? Not yet. Okay. New share. Desktop 3. Share. Okay. Let's see here. New share. Desktop 2, desktop 3. Share. All right. Are you guys seeing Tom and Marty's kitchen? Tom and Marty, are you seeing your kitchen? Okay. So Delaney, just so you know, I've lost Tom and Marty's audio. Oh, they're on mute. That's okay. All right. So quit screwing around, Michael. Let's get back with the tour. Okay, so now we're walking through their house. This again is the long hallway. Heading down to the master wing, the primary wing. We're now looking down the stairway to the lower level. And we're going to head into the mechanical space. This is where we can see the equipment that Tom and Marty have in their home that is allowing them to be a net positive energy home. All right, moving on. All right, so we're down in the lower level. This to the right is the geothermal heating and cooling system. What that basically is a heat pump that utilizes energy from the ground. How does that work? What we do is we run a loop that sends water out into the surrounding area. We bury this loop 6 to 8 feet below the ground, and then that brings air or water back into the house at steady state temperature of 50 to 55 degrees temperature. That's our starting point. That's our core energy, if you will. And then we add 25% energy to run a compressor or an evaporator, depending on whether it's heating or cooling. And then we get 100% delivered heat. So this has what is called a coefficient of performance of 4. 1 unit of energy in, 4 units of energy out. That is part of the conversation when we think about utilization of energy, is how we're heating and cooling this home. We're going to move from here to the next conversation. We've addressed conservation. We've addressed utilization. We're now going to talk about generation. And it's important to know that that is the last step we do. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to add expensive solar panels onto your home if you haven't first addressed utilization, reducing the amount of energy that you're using, and conservation. First and foremost, reducing the amount of energy that you're losing. So we're going to have an opportunity to actually show you how passive thermal works in Tom and Marty's home. Why passive thermal? Well, when we look at the renewable energy resources available here in Michigan, our first step is always to do an analysis of what's out there. And in Michigan, at the location of Tom and Marty's home, what we found is sunlight was the best possible renewable energy resource. In some cases, wind energy is a good resource. As it turns out, the center part of Michigan has a wind resource level of 1. The coastal regions of Michigan have a wind resource level of 5, which is actually better than many areas of Florida. Who knew? But where this house was located, we looked to passive thermal as our strategy. And why would we do that? The sun doesn't send a bill. It's the ultimate source of energy. We cut out the middleman and go right to the source. And that's exactly what we did with Tom and Marty's home. One of the things that we did as we were considering the location of Tom and Marty's home and the orientation and its very design is we took into account the different altitudes of the sun in the location of the home. And what we learned is that the summer sun is at an altitude that can be blocked out by overhangs. Let me go ahead and mark on this. So that summer sun coming down is shaded by the overhangs. That same summer sun in the winter can penetrate underneath the overhangs and drive deep into the building. That actually works out fairly well because in the winter time when the sun is low, we want that energy coming into the house. However, when the sun is high in the summer, we can use a very familiar technique, which is called an overhang, to help block that sun up. The other nice thing about that is it helps to manage, remember the 4 control layers. Water was the first control layer for our walls. One of the ways that we help ensure longevity and high performance in our homes and low maintenance is having overhangs that direct the water well away from any kind of tracking down the face of the building. So we're going to go next. So we were downstairs. We're going to come back up from the basement. We're going to walk through the hallway and we're going to land up here in the main living space again. So I'm going to jump over to the other screen. Talk amongst yourselves. All right. So we were downstairs. We're going to spin around, go back into the hallway in the finished basement portion. Head up the stairs to the circulation hall at the north of the home. Walk down the hallway to the center and then spin around and look at the main living space. Now what you're seeing there is something called a clear story. That's a band of high windows located above the primary roof form. This is a very effective way to bring sunlight and the sunlight energy deep into the house. And then if you notice there below those, we also have a full bank of windows. About 70% of the southern facing plane of Tom and Marty's home is windows. Now we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. All right, so what's often fun is our clients on June 21, they'll send pictures from their mobile devices where the sunlight is magically stopping right at the base of the windows and not penetrating into the house on June 21, on the longest day of the year. And then on the opposite side of the year, they're often amazed at how deep the sunlight penetrates into their house. I like to joke and say, it's as if it was planned. Now we're using another technique with Tom and Marty's home because the nice thing about sun energy is it works, right? But what do you do when the sun goes down? Because it's known to do that, right? Comes up, goes down. So what we've done with Tom and Marty's home is use a device called a TROM wall, T-R-O-M-B-E. And exactly what is that? A TROM wall is nothing more than the same thing we just showed you, all right? This is passive solar energy in action. You have the sunlight coming through the windows. landing on the incident surface, which is the floor, which in Tom and Marty's house happens to have 2 inches of concrete underneath it and a tile surface on top of it. That heat energy is then absorbed into that floor. And then when the sun goes down, that heat energy is re-radiated into the house. That's awesome, except for one thing. Our clients have this nasty habit of wanting to furnish their homes. And so when they have things like carpeting and chairs and other things, that incident sunlight energy is not actually absorbed into that slab. It's actually radiated directly into the space. And so back as we were coming up with the design of this house, we thought, well, how can we set this up so that we can basically get our clients out of the collector? And what we did is utilize this thing called a trom wall. So we have the same plane of glass, we have the same slab, but what we do is we get our clients out of the collector and we take that slab and tilt it up and create a thermal storage surface that's a vertical surface. And how this works is in the winter, when the sun isn't blocked out by the overhang in the summer, in the winter when the sun is low, the sun angles bring the sunlight in, it goes through a pane of glass, it lands on a selective surface, which is a surface that is coated aluminum, and it's designed to send 95% of the energy inward and only 5% outward. So basically, it's a one-way valve for energy. That energy then accumulates in these walls, and then later after the sun goes down, that heat energy is radiating into the space. And what's nice about radiant energy is it's line of sight energy. So it doesn't decay as it moves across the length of the space. And so as that heat energy is moving into the space, then we get convective energy moving, and it's like a mechanical system with no moving parts. It's amazing. Now you might say, that's awesome, but what does that look like? Well, we're standing right here. We're going to walk through the house, through the home study, into the master primary suite, and stand here at the door to the master suite, primary suite, still learning. And we're going to show you what that view looks like here using the digital scan. So we're going to go to a new 3 and share. Excellent. All right. So we're heading back this way. This is where Tom and Marty are sitting currently, is at that dining room table. Hi, Tom and Marty. And then we're going to walk through the home study. And then we're going to come to the dressing area. And then take a hard left. Whoop. And one more. There we go. All right. We're now standing in the primary suite bedroom, and I invite you to tell me where the trom wall is. Now, this is not a poll question. The trom wall is right here. So for all intents and purposes, to the user's experience, it just looks like a wall. But on the other side of that wall, there's some really exciting technology going on that's making a difference for Tom and Marty. So let's head back to the PowerPoint. And then we're going to take a look at what this looks like on the outside. So you're looking at this surface of Tom and Marty's space from the inside is what we were showing you before. And now we're going to show what that view looks like from the outside. This is the trom wall. This is another trom wall. And this is the third trom wall. So either we have direct gain or we have direct gain into trom wall storage. And what's neat about the trom wall is it stores up this energy. So it's kind of like bankrolling the energy from the sun. All right. So we're going to move from here. Oh, actually, we're not going to move anywhere. So you might be wondering, yeah, Michael, that's great, but does this stuff really work? I mean, this all sounds good. I got the diagrams and the arrows and the squiggly lines. I got all that. But does this really work? Well, for those of you who are in the Midwest, you might remember the first of many polar vortexes that we experienced that was fairly extreme. This was back in January, New Year's Eve, as it turns out, 2019, and minus 16 degrees at 6 a.m. So how does this house perform when it's a polar vortex and it's minus 16 degrees at 6 a.m.? Well, this is Tom and Marty's thermostat. And you'll notice that when they were looking at this, the temperature, this was around 1:23 in the afternoon. It was 3 degrees. It warmed up to a balmy 3 degrees outside from the minus 16 it had been the night before. And their set point was 68 degrees on their thermostat. Well, how was it actually performing? How it was actually performing is the inside temperature was 76 degrees. The furnace was off, and they actually had to crack the window. It got a little too warm. And so they had this incredible experience while the rest of us were huddled down, bracing against the cold. Tom and Marty were breathing fresh, crisp winter air in a 76-degree environment, all with no moving parts, no added energy, no mechanical devices necessary, all using passive means. So that's what we like to suggest. Can this work? And Tom and Marty are going to say more about that in a little bit. So we're now going to move back into the entry area, because we've been talking about heating, which is great, but there's this other part of the year called summer. And, how do we manage that? How is there some way that we can use passive means to manage cooling? Well, let's take a look. So we're going to move from there up into the tower. I don't know any of you who didn't notice that tower. The tower is one of the coolest architectural pieces on the project. And I mean, who doesn't want a tower in their home? But this tower is actually doing a few more things than you might imagine. This tower has actually been modeled using computational fluid dynamics in the University of Michigan Blue Lab from the College of Engineering. We did modeling to determine how we could actually use this tower as a passive cooling device. So what do we mean? Well, we know that warm air rises as warm air is less dense than cold air. So with warm air rising, what if we were to build basically a thermal chimney that would act as a straw? And that could be at the leeward side of the building. So if the primary wind was coming to the house from the southwest, which we know it is because we did the windrow studies, and if we wanted to put a ventilation straw, we would put it at the back side of the building. So the positive pressure skin of the building would be bringing infiltration air in through the open windows and doors. It would be collected at the house at the back, and it would be exhausted out the top. So that's exactly what we did. We created basically a vertical duct to create passive cooling for Tom and Marty's home. This is a view standing in the entry area, looking up, but we can do better. And this is something that we could never do back when we were doing live tours, is we're going to actually walk you through the rest of the house. Quick glance into Tom and Marty's bathroom. Thanks for cleaning up the sink before the tour. And then we're going to head down the hallway. This is the circulation hallway at the north of the home. And we're going to turn our path into the tower. Now, in the past, when we've done live tours, we could only mention the tower. You're going to get to go up into the tower. And we want to say hats off to our friends at Homadi who braved agoraphobia to make their way up this ladder to the tower and facing fear, like in a big way. And now standing up here through the magic of the digital scan, you get a chance not only now, but at the convenience of your own time, going to the Visible Green Home site, you can go up into Tom and Marty's tower, and you can have the same view that Tom and Marty have. As we look around towards the northeast, and there's you can see the farm operations building and the solar panels. We're going to talk about that in a second. So this is something that's pretty exciting for us to be able to bring you up into the tower without having to navigate the stairway. All right, moving on. This is so exciting, you guys. It's fun to be able to take you guys on these tours. I'm going to go back to the walk mode. And then we're going to head back down. Kind of feel like Superman being able to jump tall buildings in a single bound, something along those lines. I'm probably dating myself. All right, let's go back to the other screen. All right, the last piece we want to talk about is generation. So we've done all these great things in terms of conservation. We've done these great things in terms of innovation. And now we're talking about generation. We've talked about the free energy, the passive energy. But at some point, we will have to add electrical energy to the home. And in Tom and Marty's home, we have a 16.8 kilowatt array on the roof of the farm operations building. And that is generating through those inverters all the power it takes to run this house and charge an electric vehicle. And Tom has been awesome, and he's been keeping track of the power over the years. And we're really excited to report that at this point, with 5 years in, we are looking at, including charging an electric vehicle, an excess positive energy of 3,500 kilowatt hours per year. That's enough to charge yet another electric vehicle. So with Tom and Marty here, we'd love to get their input. And Tom and Marty, if you could share with us a little bit about what is it like to live in an energy-free home? Wait, I think you have to unmute yourself.
The main thing that feels so different concerns the passive aspects of the architecture and structure of the building, the things that Michael just went through. We don't really notice in terms of experience anything from the photovoltaic system overall. That's just, all that's doing is substituting for supplementing from the utility company. And so the thing that really is amazing is how warm and comfortable the house stays all winter long, where we bring it up to 69 to 70 degrees once you get through a shoulder month or two, and it just stays there the whole winter. And most of the time the only air blowing around has to do with the heat recovery ventilator. It's to keep fresh air in the house, but there are no fans running. There's just silence and warmth, including, as Michael showed you, all the sun shining through the windows. And then the warmth that comes off of these trom walls at 7 o'clock in the evening after a day of -5 degrees weather with a clear sky. These trom walls on the inside surface go above 95 degrees, and they remain that way through the night. So that is radiating heat into the space throughout the night. And if it's a clear day the next day, then you have the sun also doing its thing. And it truly is an amazing experience to open your windows to cool down your house when it's -5 degrees outside. It's sort of exhilarating. It's hard to describe that experience of immediate fresh air that's very cold air in the house.
Tom, what you just said, I just want to mention, hard to describe. What is so exciting about these high performance homes that we're doing and what we did with you, which is near, approaching passive house level performance, is it's literally a new experience. We're all accustomed to being cold and drafty in our houses.
Yeah.
We just like accepting that as normal.
Yeah.
What you're experiencing is what's possible. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. So having this experience ourselves, my advice to other people doing this sort of thing is really start with the passive design. Do as well as possible with your passive systems. And once you're sure, or basically have a good idea of how that's going to perform, then supplement with a photovoltaic system to complement it, to fill in the cracks, so to speak. And it's really a similar experience with the tower, the cooling tower during the summer. We've just become so accustomed to air conditioning that to live without air conditioning during the summers is a whole new experience. And that's because we have the French windows. You probably saw them all down the southern exposure of the house. And all those French windows are wide open, except during rainstorms. We have to keep an eye on the rain because you can be closing windows very fast if a big thunderstorm rolls through. But that experience of having natural ventilation through the house is another really, it's like a game changer in terms of the experience of actually living in the house during the summer. We, back when we were doing tours,
I remember those days.
Those were the days when we'd have a jillion people through the house, when we would close up all the windows and turn on the air conditioning component of the geothermal system. So we do have air conditioning to cool the air that's available, but we just don't use it when it's the two of us, or we just have friends over, whatever. It's all just this open windows and free flowing air through the house. It's truly amazing.
And both winter and summer, when you can have windows open, it's an amazing experience of being connected to the outdoors, which you lose when you're in air conditioned spaces all the time.
Yeah.
And in fact, just personally, I've railed for years against the need to put on my winter jacket to go inside a restaurant in the summertime. Because it's too cold and it's too different from outdoors. Here we just, indoors and outdoors are completely connected. It's wonderful.
And guys, that's amazing.
It really is cooler inside than it is outside. It's funny how that works. And maybe you saw, as Michael's showing us around the house, we have these haiku fans. So we use the fan on really hot days when the wind might not be going as fast. Wherever we're sitting, we turn on one of the fans. In fact, you can get them so they're all motion detecting, and you go under the fan and it turns on and it just flows that much more air on you, and very low energy drain on those, or load. And it just takes a little of the edge off of those extra hot days.
Awesome. You know, that air, that moving air, like you said, in the summer, in the winter, that's incredible.
Yeah,
We're going to have another poll question here, all right, on energy.
yeah.
Actually, we're not going to have a poll question. This is going to be, so many people, when they visit these homes and these tours, they say, yeah, this is great, but just there's no way I can do that. I can't do a living building challenge home. But what you can do is this, and I'm going to give you steps towards, and this is the steps that we would recommend you taking in terms of energy. First of all, turn the lights off. Whoever guessed that at the start, you're spot on. That's exactly it. Human behavior. Imre Lovins, the director of the Rocky Mountain Institute, said we could save up to 75% of our electrical consumption if we focus on conservation, just simply turning things off. Air sealing, very next step. And by the way, this is all going to be recorded, so you can visit this later, so you don't have to worry about jotting this down. You can if you want, but we'll have access to the recording. Insulation, so air sealing comes before insulation. Focus then on your HVAC. Focus then on water heating and distribution. Focus then on major appliances. Focus then on lighting. Those are the steps that we recommend in that order in terms of whether you're looking at designing a new home or remodel an existing home, but these are the steps that we always recommend looking at. All right, now we're going to have a poll question. What is the most abundant and yet most scarce natural resource on the planet? And your choices are carbon, platinum, unobtainium, or water. I know, Tom and Marty, you're going to vote for unobtainium. I know you are. We're going to give you a few more seconds here. All right. How did we do, Delaney?
Immediately, people started voting for water, and that is the winner. You can see
All right.
85% of them chose that answer.
Great. All right. Well, let's jump into the next section and see how you guys did.
Everybody voted, maybe. It's a good question.
True or false? Water, the world's most natural, abundant resource. Of all that water you just saw on the screen, 97.5% of it is fresh, is salt water. 2.5% is fresh water. Of that 2.5%, 69% is currently locked in glaciers, and we're doing our level best to turn it into salt water. The rest is groundwater, and only 0.3% is lakes and rivers, which is where we get much of our potable water resources from. So what does that look like? What does that actually look like? We may think that the earth is wet, but it's only there's a lot of water on the surface. By cosmic standards, our planet is actually quite dry, with water composing roughly 0.02% of its total mass. If you looked at all the water in all the earth, in oceans, ice caps, and wrapped it into a sphere, it would have a diameter of about 860 miles. That 860-mile sphere is represented by the largest bubble that you see. It's sitting over the central part of the United States. That's all of the water. Now, let's subdivide that. If we looked at all the liquid fresh water, all the water that people need to survive, that blue sphere over Kentucky represents the world's liquid fresh water. Water in lakes and streams is that little teeny dot by number 3. That's all the water. So when we look at these pictures of our planet, it's a little bit deceiving in terms of what's really going on with water. What's going on? How are we managing water? Well, let's have a look. This is from USA Today, where NASA is predicting mega droughts in the West. More than we've seen in 1,200 years in terms of reduction in water and drought conditions. As I was preparing for this presentation, I've been talking for a number of years about Lake Mead and the water resources there. They are predicting a water shortage such so that for the first time in history, they're going to declare a water emergency, and Arizona and Nevada are going to have to, and New Mexico, curtail their water consumption. And they're concerned about when the water gets too low and it can't get into these inlet towers, and they're going to have to find a way to route water around Hoover Dam. This is Bay Area. This is just April 20th. They're going to be imposing another wave of strict water restrictions. So this is what's going on with water right now. I don't know about you, but many people stand in front of their sinks and let it run for a little bit before they get hot water out. This is how we've been able to avoid that with Tom and Marty's home. This is something called a structured plumbing system. And what that means is that we bring a water line, let me do this in blue. We bring a water line from the tank out to all of the devices, but we make a return loop that comes back to the bottom of the tank. We then insert a pump at this location. When you come to the sink and you want to use the water, you activate a remote button, which turns on the pump, and it drives the water through the loop. So that water that would have typically been going down the drain is now sent back to the tank. So this way we can bypass one of the larger areas of water loss, is waiting for water to get hot in a home. And in Tom and Marty's home, we have these opportunities for all these different water devices, and everything has an activation pump to be able to bring the water back. So that's a very simple system that's easy to do in a new home. It's possible to do in an existing home, but it's called a water recirculation loop. Now, at Tom and Marty's home, we did all of the conservation measures, and then we went into the kind of generation measures. We're actually drinking water from the sky. This is the delivery on the day of delivery out at Burbeck at Beacon Springs, when they showed up with the tanks. And then this is the tanks being buried. We have 3 2,500-gallon cisterns that will give us a total of roughly 3 months of water supply using continuous use when they're full. And we go through special devices to extract all the debris, and then we bring it down into a filtration area. So we're going to go down to this plumbing area. We're going to walk through the house. I'm going to actually take you down into what we call the plumbing pit. Again, something that we could never do when we were live in person. And let me go back to the digital scan and share screen. All right. So coming back into the main north hallway. And heading down the hall, going back downstairs. And then this is the mechanical area that we were in before. If you remember, the mechanical area is to the right. We're now going to actually take you down to the plumbing pit. And again, visiblegreenhome.com, and you can do the same thing from the convenience of your own computer. All right, or mobile device. So here is our water management system. This is where we have our 3-part water filtration. We go through a sediment particle filter, we go through a carbon filter, and then we go through a UV sterilizer. This system is creating water from the sky that has actually been tested to be more pure and a higher grade than the water that we're taking out of the ground for the well. And Tom and Marty will talk about that in a little teeny bit here. But this is the exciting thing about this is we know it's possible because we're doing it. The down part to this is when we took this to the building officials and said, we'd like to be harvesting this water and we'd like to use it for potable purposes, they went to the strict building code and they said, you know what? It's not in the code, we can't approve it. And I get it. They're interested in, maintaining health and well-being for everyone in the country, and including Tom and Marty. And so at Tom and Marty's home, this has been, unfortunately, the situation is we're only legally able to drink water from the ground, and the outside hose bibs are plumbed for the rainwater, which means that Tom and Marty's foundation plants are drinking better water than Tom and Marty are drinking. But I'd love to hear from Tom and Marty. Any thoughts on what is it like to live in a home that literally drinks from the sky?
Well, yes, water is precious, and many of our current methods for sourcing and managing water have to do with getting rid of water, get it away from the buildings, get it away from the roads, get rid of water. When in fact, what we need to be doing is use water as it falls on the land, use the water as it's going on its normal path. So everything that we've done here, the house and also the regenerative agriculture, has to do with collecting the water that comes to us and using it. And then when we're done using it, we don't push it away and send it down the hill where it's going to erode the soil and be gone forever. We keep it for the agriculture, we keep it in swales, which collect their dips on the contour of a hill, collecting the water and allowing it to soak back into the ground. A fairly common way of thinking about that these days, people, especially in cities, are building rain gardens, and it's the same concept. Let's take the water that we have, let's not flush it down the sewer, into the river, into the ocean, be done with it forever. Let's soak it back into the ground. And that is one of the big things that we are doing here with water.
Let me add that the advocacy process that Michael described seems to have had a positive result, or let's say some positive direction in Lansing, Michigan, which is the capital of the state, where they are working on plumbing codes that would allow local plumbers to have some rules and direction on how to inspect systems like we have. That's also the engineer from Minnesota who designed the system has now become a partner in one of the larger rainwater harvesting companies, and is quite active in Washington doing a similar thing. Because you talk with plumbers about this and they say, yeah, it's just kind of ridiculous. There's such a resource that we have available to us, yet in so many counties across the nation, it's not allowed for getting your certificate of occupancy. And we really like our water when we are able to drink it directly. It's hard to describe the taste compared to the well water that we also have. We have two completely full systems for doing both of these, like Michael said, and we much prefer the rainwater.
Love it. So we're going to have our suggestions for how you, if you can't go to the extent that Tom and Marty have, or you're not feeling like you're able to do that at this time, what steps would you take to manage water in your home, whether it's a new home you're designing, a remodel, a retrofit? The first is turn off the tap. I mean, that's how many of you run your water while you're brushing your teeth and run excess water. Human behavior is always the first step we want to look at. Then moving to, if you're going to be replacing fixtures, moving to low flow fixtures. And these are gallons per minute and gallons per flush. Then, as Tom and Marty were talking about, rain gardens, helping the earth so that this water doesn't run off and become stormwater. Rainwater capture, rain barrels, something quite simple. And then the ultimate holy grail is rainwater cisterns. And it's so funny because in the early part of my career, when we did a lot of work on older homes built in the 20s, there was always this lurking potential that a cistern would be discovered. Well, now we're putting cisterns in. So there you have it. All right. Poll question as we move into our final section of our morning conversation. How does the air quality in your home compare to outdoor air? And the answers possible are it's either much better, slightly better, same, or slightly worse. And we'll give you a few seconds to weigh in on this. How are we looking, Delaney?
75% of you have said slightly worse.
All right, so let's have a look and see. We got someone that's 1% says much better, slightly better, same. All right, let's have a look. So, you know, it's interesting because many of us live in city environments and we're considering like, what's the air like inside of our homes? Well, as it turns out, we live 90% of our life at home indoors, either in buildings at work or buildings at home. And the indoor air pollutants are 2 to 5 times and occasionally more than 100 times higher than outdoor air. Well, that doesn't sound so good. And the Journal of Allergy reports that 1/3 of our buildings are toxic or deficient in ventilation. Well, ventilation is the key. And one of the things that we're going to be taking a look at is something called the heat recovery ventilator. So we're going to go back downstairs and land over here in the mechanical space. And we're going to show you Tom and Marty's, basically what we like to say, the lungs for the home. So looking over here to the left is the heat recovery ventilator. And how that works is it basically is exactly like I just described, the lungs for the home. It takes the stale indoor air and exhausts it to the outside. And it takes fresh outside air and brings it to the inside. These two air streams will pass one another, but not touch one another in something called an enthalpy core. And they're going to exchange energy and heat so that you're basically ventilating. It's like having a window open, but without having the heat penalty that usually accompanies it. And what we thought might be fun is for Tom and Marty to, like, you know, take a look at what their air quality was. And so about 2 weeks, I think a week and a half ago, we gave them a device that is an air monitor. And it's something called Air Things Wave Plus. It's one of the many devices that's out there. And we like it because it shows a lot of the really important aspects. It measures radon, volatile organic compounds, and CO2. And the thing that we're particularly interested in these days is CO2. Carbon dioxide is used as a marker for indoor air quality in terms of biologics. And so with everything going on these days in terms of indoor air quality and viruses and infestations, what we like to see is a very low number of CO2 parts per million. What we're finding is average outside air lands around 400. Indoor air, really good indoor air, lands around 700. The lowest threshold that you want it to be would be 1,500. Tom and Marty's house, after having it set in their home for a matter of days, has come in at 58.9. I don't know that I've ever seen a house at 589, pardon me, 589. Thanks, Tom. You were leaning forward. I think you were giving me a clue. Yes, 589, which is outstanding. I mean, and then the radon, like, you know, below 4.0 action level, the VOCs, like that's like off the chart on the bottom at 82, just absolutely amazing. So let's have a little conversation with Tom and Marty about like, what is it like to live in a home with indoor environmental quality, such as a Living Building Challenge certified home provides?
Well, the thing I'd like to mention on that is something that's with one of the imperatives of the Living Building Challenge within the materials pedal. So the 7 pedals that Michael talked about, one of those is called materials. And within materials, then there is a imperative that all the materials that are used to build the house are run through the gauntlet of a red list to ensure that none of 500 different chemicals, toxic chemicals, are used in any of the products that go into the house. And that, while it was an arduous process, because we vetted around 950 products during the project, roughly 550 of those were acceptable, and we rejected the other 400, whatever it is. And this one really addresses the VOC, the volatile organic compounds measure there. But just knowing that we have really safe materials that we built the house with is really a reassuring, sort of comfortable thing. At the extreme, it'd be like a material like asbestos. There is absolutely no asbestos in this house. But then you back up from there, and there's all sorts of other stuff that have been determined can be used in building materials, but they're not safe to live around. And which seems kind of crazy, you know, that's the reality of our building environment right now in the US. And that's
Tom, I want to interject. This is so funny you're saying that, because as I like to say, selecting products to go in our clients' homes involved 3 things. Do you like it? Can you afford it? Can we get it? We were missing the 4th thing, which is, will it kill you?
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
Love it.
Well, just Michael's comment about this cute little device that measures air quality. It seems like that would be a really good starting place to understand your own indoor air. And I think they're not overly expensive, the various devices, to just let it sit in your house for 2 weeks, 2 months, and see where things stand. And then you know what you ought to be addressing for indoor air quality.
Yeah, as we like to say, what gets measured gets managed. And that's a really great point. So we're going to move on to our tips from architectural resource to Tom.
Can I say something real quickly?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done. Go ahead, please.
That with Living Building Challenge, once again, advocacy has a big impact. It did for us on for some of our manufacturers that we used, where they actually, because it's a feedback process. We were very vocal over the phone and also giving letters and so on when we were rejecting a material because of problems with red list materials in it. And more than one of the manufacturers actually changed the way that they are manufacturing their products based on our feedback to them.
Yeah, as I said at the start, it's an advocacy, it's a philosophy first, Living Building Challenge.
Yeah.
It's an advocacy second, and then lastly, it's a certification program. So what you guys were is a piece of that advocacy and being a voice for change. So here are the architectural resource steps towards improving your indoor air quality. Human behavior. If you can smell it, don't bring it into your house. I mean, that sounds pretty simple, but you'd be surprised. Eliminate all combustion. So, you know, if we take a look at sources, combustion is one of the biggest sources of indoor pollutants. Automatic point of use exhaust. motion sensor, anything that kind of gets you as the human out of the equation and make sure it comes on when it needs to come on. Filters, minimum efficiency rating, reporting value. MERV is minimal efficiency reporting value. And what we would like you to take a look at is MERV 13 or potentially HEPA, which is 15 to 20. HVAC, what kind of ventilation system are you looking at? And do you have an ERV or an HRV? And last but not least, inline UV sterilization, which is the extreme. And that is what we're seeing going on these days with the virus concerns. And then as Tom and Marty have said, monitoring, really seeing what's going on. So Tom and Marty, here we are at the culmination of an incredible process with you guys living in a Living Building Challenge home. I thought we'd give you a moment just to share, what has this meant to you? What has this been like? What is it like to actually living in a home at this level of performance?
When we started talking, our first comments, Marty talked about the little steps that we take all along the way through this project. Well, we've been at this almost 10 years now, and we have noticed a real shift in our thinking about what's important for us personally. We've been married many years, 40 years. We've been partners a long, long time. And in the beginning, I'd say that the thing that seems to really be leaving us was present in the beginning. And it was an orientation to doing a lot of stuff for ourselves. And so the way we were spending our lives, especially early in this project, it had to do with the beauty of the place, and we were going to make the challenge. You meet the challenge and make the grade and get full living status for this huge project that we're doing. How could we have a demonstration farm and sustainable farming methods? All these things sort of, meeting the challenge of moving this industry forward and so on. Now, over time, so we were spending a lot of energy, or a lot of our life was focused on doing these things that in large part had to do with ourselves. And what we've discovered now, as we look back on the 10 years, we've sort of changed in this process with a much bigger orientation to the people out there, starting with our own family members and our friends. And what's it say?
Exactly 5.
Okay. And it's really for us, it becomes a philosophical thing of how we're spending our lives. And the active word in there is spending. Are we spending our daily life to get things better for ourselves, or are we spending our daily life for the benefit of others, for the benefit of the world, for the benefit of the natural environment? And it truly is a transformation for us. And I think it's because of all this stuff, the 4,000 people we've had through our home on tours, and just talking about this stuff, it really has transformed us. And I'd say very much for the better, and frankly, a much happier sort of life. We're not thinking just about us in this house. We're thinking about future generations in this house. We're not thinking just what we can get out of this farm. We're thinking about how we can restore some of the natural aspects and bring back species that are disappearing, and bring back health to the soil, and all things that are out there that are going to endure long after we're gone. So that's
as if we were part of a bigger ecological system than just our very little selves. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Tom, you always inspire me with your words, and what you just inspired is a recollection of the Terence Tempest Williams quote that the eyes of the future are looking back upon us, and they're praying for us to look beyond our own time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt that what you guys have done, and it has been a significant impact on your lives. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of resources. I mean, this was a major commitment, but you now can look at this legacy that not only do you get to live in, but
Yeah.
you're showing the world what might be possible if we were to literally rethink everything about how we build our environments and what we've come to accustom as usual, and what we refer to as BNO. And Gary's going to share a few things about BNO in a second. Well, Tom and Marty, I want to say thank you for your time and effort and allowing us to come and visit your home. And what we'd like to do now is complete this portion of our presentation and then move into one more thing. So you've learned about Tom and Marty's home, but we'd like to share with you a little blip of a possibility. This is a picture of LA. This is a picture of LA after the shutdown. Same exact city. My granddaughter, who lives in San Diego, just a stone's throw from LA, was talking recently with us, and she's 12, so she's starting to become aware of the world. And she has a class in junior high school, which is called ecology. And she's learning about what's going on with the planet. And she reached out to us and she said, actually was talking to my wife, Cindy, and she said, Grandma, why isn't anyone doing anything about this? I want you to imagine being a 12-year-old, looking out to your world and asking your grandmother, why isn't anyone doing anything about this? Well, we're really excited to share with you today that we are introducing to the world a possibility. Many of you may be looking at Tom and Marty's house and thinking, yeah, this is great, but I don't have the resources, I don't have the time, I don't have the dedication, but I still want to do something. And for many, financial is the impediment. Well, what we have done is we have revisited how we've always done things. We started a project that we call the Two Horses Project. There's a funny story by Kevin Kelly that talks about how the Roman roads were built at the width of two horses, because that's how they moved around in carts and chariots. And then when the Roman builders went to England to build the tramways, they built it at the same width. And when they came to America, they built the railroad at the same width. And this 4 foot, 8.5 inches ends up being determining the width of the solid rocket booster engines for the space shuttle. The width of two horses, it's as if old knowledge has been handed down and become locked in stone and determining what we're all about. Well, we thought, what can we do to make a high performance home available to anybody at the same cost as a standard market new home subdivision home? So literally 2 years ago, this is April 15, 2019, this is the architectural resource team, and we were interviewing builders to join this team. We ended up generating a team that had 2 builders, 2 lenders, a green consultant, a quality control, quality assurance rater from the FIAS organization, and 4 sets of clients. And we worked together across the course of these 2 years to generate a passive house that would be available to anyone at market rate. And I'm really excited to say that we have done that. And we're in the final throes of putting together the template project for what we are calling the Two Horses. This is now possible. We are, again, as I said, we're in the final development, and we've already received certification. We've also done a carbon calculation on this, working with our enhanced intern team. A typical new home emits roughly 41,000 kilograms of carbon emissions in its creation. This home is going to issue 2,700 grams of carbon. It's 95% less than a conventional new home. And many people, unfortunately, don't know about these kind of homes. They know about something that we call BNO. And I'd like to invite Gary Cade to join us now and share briefly a little bit about BNO. So Gary, you have to turn on your video, I think. And then you
Yeah, Michael, I'm actually trying to do that.
You're doing great.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
It's Zoom.
Great.
It's gonna be it's stuff. There's stuff.
So, Michael, thank you. I mean, really exciting. Hi, everyone. Gary Cade. Michael, I've been working with you now very closely for 5 years, and I've just been amazed by you and your team. You know, first, Tom and Marty's Living Building Challenge. There's only 2 on the planet. And now a real game changer, the 2-horse project. The last barrier, the high performance passive house is the cost. But here now, the game changer is that we can do this, the design and build, doing it where it actually is cost parity with conventional building. So the last barrier is smashed. Again, cost parity on conventional building. And then unfortunately, everybody who's on the call or new on the call, I talk a lot about BNOs. I've been a licensed builder for close to 40 years. And what's quite shocking is, we as builders are very slow to innovate. We're very comfortable doing the same things we've always done, which leads to brand new homes that are obsolete. Brand new and obsolete. I mean, it's like crazy that we're doing this. But, again, as builders, we tend to be slow to innovate and stuck in our ways. So today, there's a huge opportunity to get started. And just quickly, I want to say the hardest part to starting anything, fulfilling on a big goal or dream, is actually getting started. Wishing about it, dreaming about it, thinking about it won't get it done. And today, for being on the call with us, Michael and his team is generously offering a free consultation. And that's how you move off where you're stuck, or maybe, you're just now getting ready to actually start creating this. And the first step is getting started. So Michael, I'm going to send it back to you so you can share with them how they can actually set that appointment and get started. Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, Gary, thank you for that input. That's really awesome. So if you would like to schedule an appointment to discuss a project with AR, here's how you'll do that. If you're on a computer, at the bottom, you can go to the button that says reactions, and there's something that says raise hand. If you click on that, and then if you're on a mobile device, if you go to the bottom, you'll see more under the 3 dots. Click on raise your hand. If you raise your digital hand, what we're going to do is we're going to move you, after this meeting completes, into a breakout room. And the AR team is waiting to take your name and a little information about your project. And then someone will reach out to you, either Gary or myself, will give you a call to learn more about what you're interested in doing and how we can possibly help you. Well, we've run a little bit over time here. We're 3 minutes over, but I really want to say how much we appreciate the opportunity to share with you what we are all passionate about at Architectural Resource. This is why we are alive on this planet, is to make a difference for people and create possibilities where nothing ever occurred before them as possible. And like Gary said, cost is no longer an impediment to making this step happen. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you in the breakout rooms.